Hey everyone, and welcome to our explainer on the source material covering the growing pains of a new nation. We're diving into the early republic, looking specifically at the years from 1789 to 1814. So, if you're getting ready for your Unit 6 assessment, you are in the exact right place. We're going to make sure you're totally prepared by breaking down all the major leaders, conflicts, and changes of this era. Let's get started. Right off the bat, I want you to imagine something. Have you ever been the new kid at school? You know the feeling, right? It can be totally overwhelming. You have to figure out all the unspoken rules, learn who's actually in charge, and just try to figure out how to deal with all your new neighbors. Well, right after winning the Revolutionary War, the newly born United States was basically that exact same new kid. The country was going through some massive growing pains. They'd just broken away from Great Britain, and now they had to build their own identity completely from scratch. Like, how would the government actually run? How would they deal with the countries around them? It was a time filled with really big questions and, honestly, some pretty messy answers. To make studying a breeze, here is our quick roadmap for today. We'll be hitting 6 main stops. Washington sets the rules, the first 2 political parties, slavery in the Republic, expanding the map west, Native American resistance, and finally, the War of 1812. All right, moving right along to Section 1, Washington sets the rules. Let's look at how our first president set the tone for everyone else. There's a super important vocabulary word you need to know for your test, and that's precedent. A precedent is basically an example for everyone who comes after you. George Washington knew literally every single move he made was going to set a precedent. One of his absolute best ideas was creating a cabinet. A cabinet is just a group of really talented advisors for the president. Washington knew he couldn't run a whole country by himself, so he appointed incredibly smart people to help him out. Guys like Alexander Hamilton to handle the money, and Thomas Jefferson to manage relationships with other countries. But you know, Washington's absolute biggest precedent comes down to the number 2. He decided to step down and retire after serving only 2 terms as president. He did this to prove to the entire world that an American president was not a king. Freely giving up his power like that set a massive example that lasted for over 100 years. Okay, Section 2, first 2 political parties. Let's dig into the drama that started brewing right inside Washington's own group of advisors. Washington really wanted everyone to just get along, but his 2 top guys, Hamilton and Jefferson, disagreed on practically everything. Alexander Hamilton led the Federalists, and they wanted a super strong central government. On the flip side, Thomas Jefferson led the Democratic Republicans. They wanted a lot more power to stay with individual states and ordinary farmers. These 2 groups argued over everything from how to spend the country's money to which foreign nations America should actually support. Moving to Section 3, slavery in the Republic. This was, without a doubt, the biggest and most complex conflict in the new nation. At this time, America loved calling itself a land of liberty, but millions of people were still enslaved. It was completely splitting the country in half. Northern states were just starting to abolish or end slavery, while down in the South, the system was actually growing rapidly. Let me tell you an incredibly inspiring story from this time. Mum Bet, who was also known as Elizabeth Freeman, was an enslaved woman in Massachusetts, and she did something so brave and so clever. She listened to the new Massachusetts state constitution, which literally said all people were born free and equal. So she used those exact words to sue for her freedom in court. And guess what? She won. Her victory actually laid the groundwork for ending slavery entirely in the state of Massachusetts. Now, when we look at our early leaders, their relationship with slavery was highly complicated. Privately, both Washington and Jefferson stated that they believed slavery was wrong, but their actual actions looked very different. When Washington died, he ordered in his will that all 123 of his enslaved people be freed. Jefferson, on the other hand, died deeply in debt. Because of that, 126 enslaved men, women, and children were sold off to pay his bills. Jefferson also held deeply racist beliefs that Black people were inferior and could never live equally with white people in a free society. As president, Jefferson did sign an important law in 1808 that caused a huge drop in the slave trade. This law made it illegal to import enslaved people from other countries into the U.S. But definitely be careful on your test here. While this law stopped new people from being brought across the ocean, it sadly did not end slavery for the people who were already living in the United States. All right, Section 4, expanding the map west. The new nation was about to hit a massive growth spurt.
In 1803, President Jefferson bought a giant tract of land called the Louisiana Territory from France's leader, Napoleon. We know this today as the Louisiana Purchase, and it instantly doubled the size of the United States. It's a huge deal. Jefferson sent explorers Meriwether Lewis and William Clark to map it all out, and they were guided by a brilliant Native American woman named Sacagawea. But hey, not everyone was thrilled about this. A politician named Rufus King was actually really worried that expanding this much would just create more slave states and give the South way too much power in the government.
That brings us to Section 5, Native American Resistance, because all that new land in the West definitely wasn't empty, and pushing into it caused major pushback.
Before we dive into the conflicts, grab your notes for two more crucial test terms. The first is cede, spelled C-E-D-E. It simply means to give up land or power. The second term is pan-Indian. Since the prefix pan means all, a pan-Indian movement is an alliance meant to unite all native tribes together into one really powerful group. One of the greatest leaders resisting this westward expansion was a Miami chief named Little Turtle. He successfully fought off the American army for years. But eventually, after the Battle of Fallen Timbers, he was forced to sign the Treaty of Greenville in 1795. This treaty forced native tribes to cede or give up most of the land that makes up modern-day Ohio. Little Turtle had this powerful warning. He said the settlers were like the leaves of the trees. When the sun shines again, they come back more plentiful than ever. He signed that treaty because he realized that no matter how many battles they won, the settlers were simply never going to stop coming. So, while Little Turtle had fought American General Mad Anthony Wayne at the Battle of Fallen Timbers, another native leader named Tecumseh absolutely refused to accept defeat. His big goal was to build that pan-Indian alliance we talked about to stop the settlers for good. But in a tragic turn of events, while Tecumseh was away recruiting tribes for his alliance, American leader William Henry Harrison attacked and completely destroyed his town, Prophetstown, at the Battle of Tippecanoe. Finally, Section 6, the War of 1812. Now, keep in mind, all of those native conflicts out west were happening at the exact same time as a second massive schoolyard fight with America's old bully, Great Britain. So, what exactly caused this second war with Britain? Really, it boils down to two big things. First was something called impressment. The British Navy was literally stopping American ships at sea, kidnapping American sailors, and forcing them to work on British ships. Second, the British still held forts in the Northwest Territory, and they were actively giving weapons to native warriors to help them fight against the American settlers. The War of 1812 itself was just a total roller coaster. First, the Americans invaded Canada and burned down the capital city of York, which is Toronto today. To get payback, the British marched right into the United States in 1814 and actually burned down Washington, D.C. And really tragically for the Native American resistance, Tecumseh was killed fighting alongside the British at the Battle of the Thames. Without his incredible leadership, his pan-Indian alliance totally crumbled, and that pretty much ended most native resistance to Western expansion. So what are the crucial takeaways for your test regarding how this war actually changed America? There are two huge effects. First is an economic change. Because the British Navy blockaded American ports, the U.S. couldn't buy goods from other countries anymore, so they had to start building their own factories to make things themselves. Second is a political change. Remember Hamilton's Federalist Party? Well, they were completely against the war. But when the war ended, Americans felt incredibly proud and patriotic. Since the Federalists opposed what turned out to be a really popular war, they totally lost the support of the voters and just disappeared.
And wow, that brings us to the end. As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to think a little bit beyond just passing the test. How do you think the growing pains of our early nation still affect the United States today? Think about those intense early political arguments, the absolute tragedy of slavery, and that super rapid expansion west. Those exact events built the foundation of the world that you and I are living in right now. Good luck on your Unit 6 assessment, make sure you study hard, and I will catch you next time.